Sir, I said step aside. You heard me, old man. First class is for our premium guests. Not. She let her eyes crawl from his polished cane to his deep, brown hands, to the neat, folded pocket square that matched his charcoal suit. Not for people who wander up here because they think they belong. The words cracked through the cabin like a whip. Passengers froze mid-aisle as Tessa Crowley, the flight attendant in polished red and power smile cruelty every junior feared and every complaint mysteriously lost under, hid her cruelty behind red lipstick and perfect posture. A woman who smiled like customer service, but spoke like supremacy, glared down at the man in Seat 2A. Her tone wasn't policy, it was punishment. A gasp rippled from row 3. Charles Bennett, 76, black, dignified, and trembling with disbelief, rose slowly, the weight of a lifetime balanced in one breath. I believe there's been a mistake, he said quietly. This is my boarding pass. He held it out. Platinum embossed, edges unbent. Tessa didn't take it. She crossed her arms. You people print all kinds of things these days. Someone muttered, "Oh my God," and reached for their phone. Charles blinked hard, as if refusing tears. I'm a member of your executive rewards program, he said. 30 years flying this route. Tessa snorted. Then act like it. Put that bag up top before I call security. It contains insulin, he said softly. I need it within reach. Her voice sharpened, loud enough for half the cabin. Rules apply to everyone, Mr. Pike. What was it again? Bennett? I'm sure you've bent plenty of them before. Laughter flickered from somewhere behind her nervous complicit. Charles's voice broke but stayed steady. You're embarrassing yourself. Not me. Tessa's eyes narrowed. Is that a threat? He exhaled. No, it's sorrow. Fine. Off my plane. Excuse me? You heard me. Off my plane. Security moved down the aisle. The murmurs turned into the plastic sound of filming screens raised, thumbs shaking. Charles didn't fight. He straightened, adjusted his tie, and whispered, My late wife used to love this airline. Then he turned, cane tapping, like punctuation marks of heartbreak. At the gate, the crowd stared in a mix of silence and shame. Charles's granddaughter, Zara Bennett, returned from grabbing his coffee just in time to see him being led away. The cup dropped from her hand, scattering across the tile, in brown ripples. Granddad? He didn't speak. He just shook his head and said quietly, Let it go, Zara. It's done. But it wasn't. She watched Tessa smirk at another attendant. You handle the baggage? Tessa asked, voice casual, careless. We don't want his stuff contaminating first class. Zara froze. Contaminating. The word landed like a slap. Something inside her stood up. Excuse me, she said, voice low but firm. That stuff belongs to Charles Bennett, founder of Bennett Capital and retired CEO of Skyline Engineering. Maybe you've read about him in the Wall Street Journal, not the tabloids. Tessa blinked, losing her smile. You just humiliated one of the most respected men in this country for the color of his skin, Zara continued, and you did it loud enough for the world to record. A few passengers clapped quietly. Someone muttered, Good for her. Tessa recovered her sneer. Ma'am, if you'd like to file a complaint, please visit our website. Zara leaned closer, her eyes steady. I'm not filing a complaint. I'm filing a case. Her phone was already recording. That night, as they sat in a hotel room, Charles held a cold compress against his hand. Zara sat by the window, her laptop open, the glow lighting her face with quiet fury. Her grandfather sighed. Zara, don't start a war for me. She didn't look up. No. I'm starting it for the next person who looks like you and has to beg to be seen. On the table, Her notebook page had a single line, written in black ink. "Fear not, for I am with you. I will help you. I will uphold you." Isaiah 41:10. The verse steadied her pulse. The phone in her hand buzzed another video from a stranger, another witness ready to speak. "The world wasn't blind this time," she whispered. "They thought you were invisible, Granddad. But I see you, and I'm not done." Charles smiled faintly. "That's your grandmother talking." Zara closed her laptop. "No," she said. "That's justice talking. If you've ever watched someone you love be humiliated and couldn't walk away, if you've ever wanted to turn pain into proof, then what Zara does next will make you believe in courage again. Comment. Not on my watch. If you've ever stood up for someone who couldn't fight back, like, subscribe, and stay with us. How one woman begins to shake an entire airline with truth and faith. Morning light slipped through the hotel blinds, streaking across an untouched breakfast tray. Zara sat cross-legged on the carpet, laptop open, coffee gone cold. Her phone was still buzzing emails. Missed calls. One text from an unknown number. "Please refrain from sharing last night's incident publicly. We're reviewing it internally." Aurelia Airlines compliance. She almost laughed. Reviewing meant erasing. Her grandfather, Charles Bennett, slept in the armchair nearby. Blanket around his shoulders, dignity around his bones. His breathing was slow, peaceful, a sound that reminded her why she couldn't stop now. The TV murmured. Viral footage of a confrontation on Flight 723. The anchor's voice was syrup smooth, practiced. Airline representatives declined to comment. Zara muted it. She was done waiting for comments. She opened the official complaint form again, pages of drop-downs and fine print, every box designed to drain anger into bureaucracy. Halfway through, the screen froze. A pop-up appeared. Session expired. Please log in. She stared at it for a long second, then whispered, "Of course." The next call came from the airline's corporate office. A male voice, polished and predatory. "Miss Bennett?" "Mark Ellison here, Director of Customer Experience. First, let me apologize on behalf of Aurelia Airlines. We take situations like this very seriously." His tone oozed charm. "The kind that didn't apologize, it managed." "Then prove it," Zara said. "Fire Tessa Crowley." A pause. "Ah, yes, Miss Crowley. Outstanding employee. 15 years of service. Let's not rush to judgment before a full inquiry. She called my grandfather's bag contamination. I have video." "Videos can be misleading, Miss Bennett. Context is everything." She felt her throat tighten. "The context is racism." He chuckled, softly. "Let's avoid heavy words, shall we? They complicate resolutions." Resolutions. That word sat between them like poison wrapped in velvet. "What do you want, Miss Bennett?" "I want accountability." "Then allow me to offer a gesture of goodwill." His voice dropped lower, confident. "We can extend a private settlement, business class vouchers for you both, cash equivalent of $5,000, and a confidentiality agreement. The media never needs to know." Zara's heart pounded. "You're trying to buy silence." "I'm offering closure." She closed her eyes. "My grandfather built a company that employed 2,000 people. He taught me that closure without truth is corruption." Ellison sighed, irritation leaking through. "If you post that footage, you'll be violating our proprietary media policy. Think carefully, Miss Bennett. The internet's attention fades fast. Do you really want your grandfather remembered for a scandal?" Click. She ended the call. Charles stirred. Who was that? "Someone who thinks justice comes with a voucher code." He smiled faintly. "The world's been trying to teach me patience for 76 years. Zara looked at him. "And what's it taught you?" "That silence is convenient and deadly." She nodded. grabbed her notepad. Then we make noise. By noon, she was in the downtown Aurelia Airlines headquarters lobby. Marble floors, glass walls, smiles sharpened by training. A receptionist with perfect teeth greeted her. "Welcome to Aurelia Airlines Corporate. Do you have an appointment?" "No, but I have evidence." She slid her phone across the desk. On the screen, the video clip Tessa Crowley's sneer, her words echoing through the cabin. "You people print all kinds of things these days." The receptionist's face paled. "One moment, please." 10 minutes later, 2 men in suits appeared. One introduced himself as Dale, from legal. The other just stared, noting everything about her clothing, posture, tone, the quiet calculus of intimidation. "Miss Bennett," Dale said smoothly, "we're here to help, but you can't film here." "I'm not filming," she said. "I'm remembering." Ellison arrived moments later, all warmth and false familiarity. "Miss Bennett, I was just trying to reach you again." He extended his hand. She didn't take it. "Save the script," she said. "I'm here for the official report. It's under internal review. Then I want the passenger manifest, security timestamp, and crew statement. That's classified. It's public record once filed with FAA Regulations 14. Section 259.7, she replied without blinking. His smile wavered just for a heartbeat. Ellison leaned closer. "You've done your homework. I had a good teacher." She nodded toward her phone background. Charles smiling beside. The first building he ever owned. "He taught me that rules don't scare people who built the system right." For a long second, Ellison said nothing. Then he gave a slow, rehearsed grin. "You'll find the world less forgiving than your grandfather did." "Maybe," Zara said, pocketing her phone, "but I'm a lot louder." Back in her car, the anger had cooled into clarity. She spoke softly into her recorder app. Day 2, evidence requested. Airline stonewalling. Next steps. File civil rights complaint. Contact witnesses. Reach legal counsel. Do not stop. She looked at her reflection in the rearview mirror. Behind the fear, there was fire. "You picked the wrong family," she whispered. "We don't fly under anyone's permission." Her grandfather's voice echoed in her head. "Then I'll persist loudly." Outside, storm clouds gathered over the skyline. Not weather, but warning. Rain slicked the windows of Zara's small apartment, tapping against the glass like impatient fingers. The world outside blurred into streaks of gray and taillights, but inside, her walls were covered with names, timelines, and printed screenshots, a war room made of truth. She hadn't slept in 20 hours. Every click of her keyboard sounded like resistance. On the desk, her grandfather's photo stared back Charles Bennett, smiling, sharp-suited, standing in front of the first factory he'd built from scratch. The man Tessa Crowley had treated like luggage. Zara replayed the video again, frame by frame, the humiliation, the sneer, the line that made the internet burn. "You people print all kinds of things these days." The clip had been shared 10,000 times overnight, but that wasn't justice yet. That was noise. She needed proof documentation that could survive courtrooms and headlines. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Miss Bennett?" The voice was quiet. Male. Nervous. "Yes. I was on that flight. Seat 4C. I'm a nurse. Name's David Kersey. I saw everything." Zara sat straighter. "Why didn't you come forward sooner?" "I work for the airline's health contractor," he said. "They told us to keep quiet," said the man in first class. Got aggressive. Her breath tightened. He didn't raise his voice once. "I know," David whispered, "and I have proof. I filmed from my seat. My phone caught the audio of her calling him those people. I can send it." But he hesitated. "They monitor staff email. I'll need another way." "Use this," Zara said quickly. giving him a secure upload link. Encrypt it and send tonight. When she hung up, her pulse drummed with adrenaline. The first crack had appeared in the wall. That evening, Zara met Maya Flores, an aviation law intern and college friend, in a coffee shop near O'Hare. Maya's hair was tied back in a sleek bun, her laptop already open. "I've read your complaint," she said without looking up. "Ellison's playing the long game. Silence, stall, settle. Classic PR containment. He won't settle with me." Maya raised an eyebrow. "You sure? They'll throw money at this until you choke on it." "I don't want money. I want accountability." Maya nodded slowly. "Then you'll need to prove pattern, not just prejudice. One case doesn't shake an airline. You need a chain." Zara exhaled. A chain. The word anchored her. Crew rosters, previous complaints, training manuals, anything showing bias enforcement. And, Zara, be ready. They'll dig into your life next. Zara's smile was sharp. "Let them. I've got nothing to hide." Maya slid her a flash drive. "Here's the template for an FAA bias filing. And a quote from my mother, she's a pastor." She smiled faintly. "You'll like it." Zara plugged in her headphones as Maya left. The recording was from a sermon. "Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." Isaiah 41. The words wrapped around her like armor. By midnight, David's video arrived. Zara played it once, her chest tightened, her jaw set, then again, slower. The audio was clearer than she dared hope. Tessa Crowley's voice sliced through the background noise. "We keep first class respectable. You people always try to push up here." A murmur of agreement from another crew member. Someone snickered. Then Charles's quiet voice, "Ma'am, that's unnecessary." And Tessa, "Venom sweet. So is pretending you belong." Zara's eyes burned, but not with tears. "They recorded their own damn guilt," she whispered. She forwarded the file to Maya with one line. "This is Exhibit A." Then she typed a post for her growing audience. "My grandfather was humiliated on Flight 723. They called him disruptive. Here's the truth they tried to delete." She hit upload. Within minutes, the video detonated online retweets, reposts, outrage, under the trending tag number Flying While Black. Strangers shared their own stories. Gate agents calling security for tone, attendants refusing blankets, pilots apologizing for passengers' discomfort at seating arrangements. A movement began to breathe. At Aurelia Airlines headquarters, the same video played on Mark Ellison's office screen. His jaw flexed. "Find out who leaked this," he snapped into the phone. "If it's internal, I want them terminated by morning." Tessa Crowley sat across from him, pale but defiant. "You're not going to hang this on me, Mark." Ellison's smile was thin. "You humiliated a client who turns out to be a multimillionaire CEO. You filmed it in 4K. Congratulations, you've become the company's new learning moment." Tessa glared. "You told us to enforce standards. And now you'll take responsibility for them." He ended the call. "PR wants your resignation by Friday. Be grateful if I let you keep your pension." She rose, trembling with fury. "You think they'll forgive you when this spreads? You built this culture." Ellison leaned back. "And I'll build a new one on your ashes." Tessa left without another word, her heels stabbing the carpet like punctuation. Back at Zara's apartment, the clock read 2:17 a.m. She stood on her balcony, the city lights flickering like faraway witnesses. The post had surpassed 1 million views. Her inbox was chaos messages from reporters, lawyers, passengers, strangers, thanking her for speaking up. She whispered into the wind, "This isn't just about us anymore." Inside, her grandfather stirred. "You still awake?" "Barely," she said. "We started something." Charles smiled softly. "Then finish it, Zara. Don't let them bury truth in paperwork." "I won't," she promised. I'm building the chain they can't break. As dawn approached, she poured herself another cup of coffee, pinned the verse of courage above her desk, and began drafting her next move. A formal appeal to federal regulators, backed by the crowd's outrage and her own unshakable calm. The airline could erase passengers, but not proof and not faith. The morning Zara walked back into Aurelia Airlines headquarters, the building itself seemed to hum with tension. Security guards doubled at every door, reporters gathered behind barricades outside, and the company's gold logo gleamed like nothing had happened. Inside, it smelled of lemon polish and denial. Zara's heels clicked against the marble, each step echoing louder than the whispers that followed her. Employees stared, but looked away fast, afraid of recognition. She wasn't just a customer anymore, she was a ghost haunting their corridors. At the elevator bank, a voice stopped her. "Miss Bennett." She turned. A young flight attendant, early 20s, name badge flipped, stood nervously. "You don't know me," she whispered, "but I was in the crew room when Tessa bragged after that flight. She said, you have to keep the riffraff reminded of their place. I tried to report it. My supervisor told me to stay loyal." Zara's throat tightened. "What's your name?" The woman hesitated, eyes darting to the cameras. "You didn't get it from me," she murmured, and walked away. Zara stood there, stunned. Then she hit lobby 12, top floor Mark Ellison's office. The elevator hummed upward, glass walls revealing a skyline too clean for the mess inside this building. Ellison's assistant looked up from her desk. "He's not seeing visitors." Zara smiled politely. "He will." Before the woman could protest, Zara opened the office door herself. Ellison was mid-call, jaw tight, voice colder than steel. "No, we can't. Terminate the union rep because we'll get sued. Do it quietly then." He turned. "Miss Bennett, I was wondering when the internet's favorite crusader would arrive." Zara closed the door behind her. "You built this problem," she said, "and you're still pretending it's turbulence." He gestured to the chair opposite. "Sit down. Let's talk like adults." "I'm done talking," she said. "You've suspended a whistleblower, erased crew logs, and threatened employees. You're not investigating, you're covering." He smirked. "You've got spirit. But spirit doesn't win legal battles. Money does. Power does. Truth does," she said quietly. He chuckled. "You're quoting slogans now. You think hashtags scare corporations? You'll burn out in a week." Zara leaned forward. "I have the black box data." That stopped him. He blinked. "Excuse me?" "I filed a Freedom of Information request through FAA channels. The flight's black box records ambient audio, not just cockpit chatter. It picked up your employee calling passengers undesirable. You know what that means, don't you? It means this isn't just a PR nightmare, it's a legal one." Ellison's smile vanished. "You're bluffing. Try me." She slid a flash drive across the desk. "You've got until 5 p.m. to publicly release the crew logs and issue a formal apology to Charles Bennett, or I'll make sure this plays at the shareholders' meeting tomorrow." He stood, anger rising like heat. "You don't dictate terms in my building." Zara met his glare. "Then maybe I'm in the wrong building." She turned to leave. His voice stopped her. "You think this ends well for you? We can spin you into an ungrateful opportunist, a granddaughter chasing attention off her grandfather's misfortune. That's what happens to people who think principle pays the bills." She looked over her shoulder. "Principle built your airline, Mr. Ellison. You just forgot who paid for the ticket." By noon, her phone was buzzing again. Messages, threats, headlines. Airline exec calls racism claim media noise. Zara sat in her car, parked under the gray belly of a storm, scrolling through the chaos. Fear crept at the edges of her resolve. For a second, she wanted to run home, hide beside her grandfather's quiet strength. Then, her phone lit with a new number. Maya. The text was simple. Got the black box file. It's real. FAA confirms timestamp. Zara's breath caught. It wasn't just her word anymore, it was evidence that couldn't be twisted. Her reflection stared back from the windshield, tired, defiant, shaking, but unbroken. She whispered to herself, "Tribulation worketh patience. Patience, experience. Experience, hope. We glory in tribulations also, knowing that tribulation worketh patience, and patience, experience, and experience, hope." Romans 5:3-4. She repeated it like a heartbeat until her fear steadied. By evening, Zara sat across from her grandfather in his living room. The lights were low. The TV flickered with yet another statement from Aurelia Airlines. "We take all accusations seriously and are cooperating fully with authorities." Charles turned down the volume. "They're playing the long game," he said. "They think you'll get tired." "I'm not tired," Zara said, but her voice cracked. "I'm angry. Angry that they think I'll trade justice for quiet." He reached for her hand. "Then use your anger right. It's fuel, not fire. Don't burn yourself to prove you're bright." She swallowed hard. "They called us undesirable." He squeezed her fingers. "Then we show them what desirable looks like when it stands tall." Outside, lightning flared. The next morning, Zara met Maya and two civil rights lawyers. In a downtown conference room, laptops glowed, files spread across the table like blueprints to a revolution. Maya plugged in the drive. The black box audio played, clear and damning. The voices' laughter, slurs, cruelty filled the room. Every sentence was a confession dressed as small talk. When the clip ended, no one spoke. The senior lawyer finally whispered, "This is systemic negligence and discrimination. They'll have to settle or burn." Zara leaned forward. "No, they'll have to change." Maya smiled faintly. "You sound like your grandfather," Zara exhaled. "He earned his peace. Now I'll earn ours." By dusk, Ellison's office door slammed shut behind him. He'd received the same audio file from corporate counsel, flagged urgent, internal use only. He listened once, jaw tightening, sweat gathering at his collar. His empire of silence was cracking. He called Tessa Crowley. No answer. He tried again. When she finally picked up, her voice was brittle. "You destroyed me, Mark. You destroyed yourself," he said. Her laugh was low, bitter. "No, darling. I took orders. And I recorded those, too." The line went dead. For the first time, Mark Ellison felt what his victims had fear. That night, Zara stood on her balcony again. The city lights pulsed like restless stars. The truth was no longer just hers. It had become public property, irreversible and alive. She looked up at the dark clouds and whispered, "Lord, keep me steady until victory comes." "It's time." Zara smiled, tears mixing with rain. "Then let's finish this flight." The morning broke gray and glassy. News vans clustered outside Aurelia Airlines headquarters, satellite dishes aimed at the clouds. The leaked black box recording had already reached every major network. For the first time in decades, the airline's perfect public image was spiraling, and inside its tall, mirrored tower, the people responsible were circling the wagons. Zara Bennett sat in the back of a rideshare, heart pounding as the skyline rolled past. The driver kept glancing at her through the mirror. "You're the girl from the video, right?" he asked softly. She hesitated, then nodded. "Good," he said. "My mother was told once she didn't belong in first class either. Keep going." She smiled faintly. "I will." The car stopped outside the glass doors. A line of guards and corporate staff met her gaze like she was an invading army of one. She stepped through anyway. Inside, the air smelled of nerves and money. On the 12th floor, Maya was already waiting. Laptop open. Eyes sharp. "They're scared," she said. "But scared people do stupid things. Be ready." Zara nodded. "I've been ready since they humiliated my grandfather." When they entered the boardroom, the noise stopped. 12 directors sat at a long table, faces carved in stone. At the end sat Mark Ellison, shoulders squared, expression calm, but hands clasped too tight. The CEO, Graham Tate, a man of manicured dignity, turned toward Zara. "Miss Bennett," he said smoothly, "this is a private meeting. I don't recall extending an invitation." "You didn't," Zara said. "The law did." She placed a folder on the table, copies of the FAA complaint, the black box transcript, and the witness list. "I'm here as the complainant and as a granddaughter." Ellison smirked. "A very vocal one." She ignored him. "This isn't just about one flight attendant's behavior. It's about a culture you allowed. My grandfather paid for first class. You paid him with humiliation." The CEO sighed, performing weariness. "We regret the incident deeply." "Then prove it," she said. "Not with vouchers, with accountability." A tense silence filled the room. Someone coughed. Another board member whispered, "She's right." Ellison snapped, "We're not holding court here." Zara turned on him. "No, you're holding silence. You've been holding it for years." The CEO leaned forward. "Miss Bennett, the media frenzy is damaging innocent employees. We need calm, not spectacle." "Calm is for people who can afford to wait," she said. "My grandfather waited his whole life for respect." Her voice caught but didn't break. "You owe him more than a statement. You owe him his name back." Later that afternoon, the storm hit. Literally and figuratively. Rain hammered the city as Zara stepped into her apartment, soaked to the skin. Her phone was already buzzing. Dozens of missed calls from unknown numbers. Her social feeds were filled with comments, some supportive, some venomous. "She's lying for fame." Another woke stunt. "Spoiled brat chasing hashtags." She tossed the phone onto the couch and pressed her palms against her eyes. The pressure of it all, the hate, the headlines, the responsibility crashed into her chest. The apartment door opened behind her. Charles stood there, his cane in one hand, umbrella dripping. "I saw the news," he said gently. "You look like you're carrying a building." Zara turned toward him, tears mixing with rain. "They're twisting everything, Granddad. They're saying I staged it." He walked closer. "They can't undo what the world saw, but they can make people stop believing." He placed a hand on her shoulder. "Truth doesn't need believers, child. It just needs endurance." She sank onto the couch beside him, exhausted. "I thought exposing them would feel like victory. It feels like drowning." He smiled sadly. "That's because you're still flying through the storm. Don't stop just because you can't see the runway." Her eyes glistened. "How do you stay calm after everything they did to you?" Charles looked out at the rain. "Because anger can build an empire, but endurance keeps it standing." He reached into his coat pocket and handed her a small, folded card. On it, written in neat, deliberate handwriting, was a verse she'd seen on his office wall growing up. "Let us not grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." Galatians 6-9. Zara traced the words with her thumb, her breath slowing. "You really think good wins in the end?" He chuckled softly. "No, sweetheart, but it outlasts the bad." The next morning, an anonymous email landed in Zara's inbox. The subject line read, "Internal memo, urgent." Inside was a leaked directive from Ellison himself, sent hours after her appearance before the board. Damage control protocol. Discredit the complainant. Leak prior disciplinary record of family company. Assert motive as financial gain. Neutralize narrative by Friday. Zara felt her stomach drop. He was coming for her now, not as a professional, but as a person. She forwarded it to Maya. "They're going to smear me." Maya replied instantly. "Then we get ahead of it. 9 a.m. tomorrow. Press conference. You tell your story before they rewrite it." The conference room of a small local station, filled with cameras and microphones. Zara stood behind a podium, Charles seated beside her. Reporters murmured. Flashes popped. She took a breath. "I didn't want any of this," she began. "But when the system fails you quietly, you have to speak loudly. This isn't about one rude flight attendant. It's about how easily dignity is denied and how fast truth gets buried. I've been offered money, silence, and threats. I'm choosing endurance." She lifted her grandfather's hand. "This man taught me that grace is not weakness. It's power in patience." The room went still. Every camera blinked red, recording history. Across town, Ellison watched the feed from his office. His reflection in the window looked smaller than it used to. He poured himself a drink, hands shaking. "You don't win wars with morality," he muttered. But the words didn't sound convincing anymore. He dialed his PR director. "Get me a statement. Something about compassion and values." The director hesitated. "Sir, the board's calling for your suspension." Ellison's hand froze. "What?" "Effective immediately. They're naming an interim ethics officer. And Zara Bennett's legal team just filed for federal review." For the first time, his voice broke. "Who gave them the black box?" The director swallowed. It came from Tessa Crowley. Ellison's glass shattered on the floor. That night, Zara sat on her balcony again. The city lights shimmered on wet streets below. Her grandfather joined her quietly, 2 mugs of tea in hand. "They suspended him," she said. "I saw," he replied. "And you're still not smiling." "It's not joy," she said. "It's relief. But it's not done." He sipped his tea. Justice never is. Zara leaned her head against his shoulder. "You know what scares me most?" "What's that?" "That this will fade. That people will stop caring." Charles chuckled softly. "Then you'll remind them again and again. That's what faith does. It doesn't quit." She nodded slowly. The city pulsed below them, alive and imperfect. Tomorrow, she would face another round of reporters, another round of statements, another round of endurance. But for the first time, she felt steady. The truth was finally flying on its own. Rain had washed the city clean overnight, leaving the skyline glittering under a pale sunrise. From her apartment window, Zara Bennett watched steam curl off the streets like the city was finally exhaling. For the first time in weeks, she could see the horizon without the haze of chaos. Her grandfather, Charles, sat at the kitchen table in his robe, quietly reading the morning paper. The headline across the front page made her heart tighten. Aurelia Airlines under federal investigation, whistleblowers confirm long-standing bias in first-class policy. He folded the paper neatly and looked up. "Seems the storm's listening now," he said, a tired smile tugging his lips. Zara poured coffee into 2 mugs. "They suspended Ellison yesterday. The board's pretending to cooperate, but they're cleaning house because the cameras are on them." "Let them pretend," Charles said. "Pretending is the first step toward confession." She sat beside him, staring at the case files scattered on the counter, printed emails, sworn statements, the black box transcript, and passenger testimonies from half a dozen flights. "We have the whole picture now," she said quietly, "but it's still just noise until we organize it." Charles nodded. "Then make it music." At noon, Zara met Maya Flores in the office of the civil rights nonprofit that had taken their case. The space was cramped, lined with shelves of old binders and a flickering fluorescent light. But to Zara, It felt like a war room of truth. Maya pointed to a whiteboard, covered in color-coded sticky notes. "This," she said, "is what the lawyers call the clean chain. Every document, every video, every witness linked and verified. Once it's sealed and notarized, it becomes untouchable. They can't bury it again." Zara stepped closer, tracing the path of red string connecting photos, timestamps, and legal forms. "So this is how we make truth survive." "Exactly," Maya grinned. "A clean chain isn't about who's loudest. It's about who's honest, longest." Together they worked through the afternoon, cataloging every file, signing affidavits, double-checking witness statements. The office filled with the rhythm of keys clicking, printers humming, paper sliding into folders. Every signature felt like a piece of armor. When the notary arrived, Zara's hands trembled slightly as she signed her name. The notary stamped the final document. "Chain of custody verified," she said. Zara exhaled. "It's real now." Maya smiled. No turning back. That evening, the office quieted. Outside, the last light of day turned the windows gold. Zara leaned against the desk, eyes heavy but hopeful. "Do you think this changes anything?" she asked. Maya looked up. "It already has. The board can't erase what's public. Every sealed signature is a heartbeat that keeps the truth alive." Zara nodded. "So the hearing tomorrow is just, and the world catching up." Maya hesitated. "You'll have to speak, Zara. On record. They'll question your motives, your tone, even your faith. Are you ready for that?" Zara thought of her grandfather's calm face, the way he had stood silently while others mocked him. "If he can endure humiliation in front of strangers," she said, "I can endure their questions." Maya's eyes softened. "Then let's make sure you go in armored." Zara smiled faintly. "Faith is my armor." Back home, Charles was watching the local news when she walked in. The reporter's voice carried the words she had been waiting to hear. "Sources confirm a public hearing scheduled for Friday morning to address civil rights violations by Aurelia Airlines. Witnesses include company executives, flight staff, and passenger advocates." Charles muted the TV. "You ready for your big stage?" She sank into the chair opposite him. "I'm not sure anyone's ready to carry a whole system on their shoulders." He leaned forward. "Then don't carry it. Just stand. The truth's heavy enough." She laughed softly. "You sound like scripture." "Maybe because I've been reading some," he said. He reached across the table, turning over the worn card she had kept in her notebook since the first night. "Courage, endurance, victory. You're 2/3 there. Don't stop now." The next morning, before sunrise, Zara found herself at her desk again. The city was quiet, the kind of stillness that comes before consequence. She opened her notebook and wrote a single word at the top of a new page. Victory. Her phone buzzed with a message from Maya. "Judge confirmed. Media invited. You'll speak at 10. She whispered under her breath. "But thanks be to God, who gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ." Corinthians 15:57. The verse steadied her hands. She closed the notebook, tucked it into her bag, and looked around the apartment one last time. Charles was still asleep in his chair. She brushed a kiss against his forehead and whispered, "You don't have to come tomorrow. You've already done your part." He smiled without opening his eyes. "Child, I'm coming. I want to see what victory looks like." Standing up. By mid-morning, they arrived at the courthouse steps. The air buzzed with reporters and onlookers. Protesters held signs. "Respect has no class. Dignity flies first. Stand with the Bennetts." Zara looked at her grandfather. "You okay?" He adjusted his tie. Still elegant, despite the tremor in his hands. "Never better," he said. I've waited my whole life to see this day." They walked through the cameras together, not hiding, not rushing a quiet, defiant procession of grace. Inside, the hearing chamber gleamed under bright lights. At the front sat the federal panel, somber and silent. Opposite them, the airline's new interim ethics officer shuffled papers nervously. Ellison's seat, empty and cold, spoke louder than any apology. Zara set the stack of verified documents before the panel. The head investigator nodded. "Miss Bennett, we've received your clean chain. You may proceed with your statement." She took a deep breath. For a moment, she saw the flight again, her grandfather's humiliation, Tessa's sneer, the silence of strangers. Then she heard his voice in her memory. "Don't burn yourself to prove you're bright." She lifted her head. "My name is Zara Bennett. I'm here to remind you that dignity is not a privilege you earn. It's a right you can't take away." The room went utterly still. Last month, a man who built his life on honesty was treated like a trespasser in a seat he paid for. This case isn't about refunds or policies. It's about recognition. And if this hearing does one thing, let it show that silence has an expiration date. A few people in the audience clapped quietly before the judge's gavel called for order. Zara didn't mind. She had said what she came to say. When she turned, her grandfather was smiling, proud, and calm. Later, outside the courthouse, cameras swarmed again. Reporters shouted questions. Zara gave none of them answers. She simply raised her hand and said, "The truth will speak for itself. We've done our part." Charles took her arm as they descended the steps together. "You feel that?" he said. "What?" "The air. It's lighter. That's what truth does when it's finally free." She smiled through the fatigue. "Then let's keep breathing it." They walked down the courthouse steps, hand in hand, into a city that was still flawed, but finally listening. The hearing chamber glowed under pale white lights, sterile and heavy with anticipation. Reporters filled the back rows, lenses aimed, pens ready. Zara Bennett stood at the table beside her grandfather Charles, fingers pressed against the folder containing the clean chain of evidence. Across from them, Mark Ellison and his corporate lawyers whispered behind closed expressions. The presiding chair lifted her gavel once. "We convene under federal review of Aurelia Airlines, Flight 723. Miss Bennett, you may begin." Zara rose. "This isn't about a seat. It's about dignity," she said, voice steady. "My grandfather, a paying passenger, was humiliated because a flight attendant believed he didn't belong in first class. When I asked for accountability, your company offered silence. When I refused, you offered threats." She laid the first exhibit on the desk. "Here's the video. Here's the black box transcript. Here's the truth." The screen lit. The recording filled the room. The crack of contempt. The flight attendant's voice slicing the air. "You people print all kinds of things these days." Gasps rippled through the gallery as the camera captured Charles, standing quietly, replying, "You're embarrassing yourself." "Not me." The panel chair's voice was calm but sharp. "We'll now hear from Aurelia Airlines." The company's lead counsel stood. "The recording is unfortunate," he began. But the employee acted independently. This was not a product of corporate policy. Zara leaned forward, then explained the black box data. Maya played the second file, the crew's laughter, Tessa Crowley's words floating like acid. "We keep first class respectable." No one breathed. The chair folded her hands. "Do you contest the authenticity of this recording?" The attorney hesitated. "And close. Was in Darty was a mountas. Was in after, to barter. The difficult. We had difficult, and common, and close. And close. The differ. We need context. Context, Zara said, is watching a man's humanity questioned in public. The chair nodded once. Bring in Miss Crowley. When the side door opened, Tessa Crowley entered. A smaller figure than her reputation. Gone was the perfect uniform. In its place, a plain blouse and eyes that had forgotten sleep. She took the oath and sat down. Her voice trembled, but didn't hide. Yes, I said those things. I was wrong. Were you told to treat passengers this way? The chair asked. No one says it out loud, Tessa replied. But you feel it in training. In meetings. In who gets praised for being strict. We learn who's worth accommodating. A whisper swept through the crowd. Tessa looked toward Zara. I thought I was protecting the brand. I was protecting my own fear. The chair nodded. Thank you. You may step down. Ellison's jaw tightened as Tessa passed him. He kept his eyes on the desk, fingers tapping a restless rhythm. The chair's gaze turned to him. Mr. Ellison, please take the stand. He stood with reluctant grace, every movement rehearsed. I oversee operations, he said. I regret that an isolated error escalated to this magnitude. Zara's voice cut through. You ordered the cover-up. You called it reputation management. Ellison's tone cooled. You're quoting internal discussions taken out of context. Maya stepped forward. Then let's restore it. She held up the leaked memo. Neutralize narrative by Friday. The words glowed on the screen like a verdict already written. The chair raised an eyebrow. Did you authorize this? Ellison hesitated. I manage brand crises. That's not criminal. Threatening witnesses is, Maya replied, playing the voicemail. Ellison's own voice filled the room. Keep quiet, or lose your contract. His facade cracked. We protect what we built. Zara looked straight at him. You protect comfort, not people. You call it order. I call it fear. The chair scribbled notes, then faced the audience. This hearing recognizes systemic failure, cultural and managerial. Before rendering recommendation, we'll hear from the affected passenger, Mr. Charles Bennett. Charles rose slowly. He leaned on his cane, but his posture was proud. I've flown this airline for 30 years, he said. That day, I was told I didn't belong in a seat I paid for. I wasn't angry. I was small. And that's what discrimination does. It shrinks people who've already fought to stand tall. His words carried farther than microphones. The gallery fell silent, moved by his calm more than outrage. Zara blinked back tears, hands clasped tight. When he returned to his seat, the chair exhaled, softly. Thank you, Mr. Bennett. 10 minutes later, the panel reconvened with its decision. The judge's voice was clear, final, and utterly human. This panel finds evidence of systemic bias and obstruction, effective immediately. Aurelia Airlines will reinstate suspended employees, issue restitution to affected passengers, and appoint an independent ombuds with full investigative power. Further, the Bennett case shall serve as precedent for federal oversight on bias enforcement. Mr. Charles Bennett is invited to chair the Advisory Council on Passenger Dignity. The gavel struck once. The sound echoed like thunder cracking through clouds. The crowd erupted, applause breaking protocol, voices rising like wind after silence. Reporters surged forward, microphones blooming like wildflowers. Cameras caught Zara and Charles holding hands, their expressions both weary and unyielding. Ellison remained seated, pale and silent. His lawyer whispered something about appeals. He didn't reply. For the first time, his authority looked smaller than the truth. Tessa Crowley lingered near the exit, shoulders bowed. As Zara passed, their eyes met, one carrying guilt, the other a tempered grace. Tessa mouthed, "I'm sorry." Zara gave a single nod. Forgiveness would take time, but acknowledgement was a start. Outside, sunlight spilled across the courthouse steps, bright and startling after weeks of rain. The crowd cheered as Zara and her grandfather appeared. Signs lifted. Dignity flies first. "We stand with the Bennetts." Reporters shouted questions. Zara raised her voice over the noise. "We didn't win a war. We told the truth, and it finally landed." Charles looked out at the people, his hand steady on her shoulder. "You made the sky honest again," he said softly. She smiled. "No, Granddad. We just reminded it who it belongs to." As they descended the marble steps, the city's noise faded into applause. The morning light hit them full on, sharp, clean, victorious. For the first time, Zara wasn't running toward justice or away from pain. She was walking forward, steady and whole, knowing the fight had changed. More than headlines, it had changed hearts. The world didn't feel fixed, but it felt possible, and that she thought was enough. The city was finally quiet. A week had passed since the hearing, and yet echoes of it still rolled through news feeds, late-night shows, and church pulpits. The story of Charles and Zara Bennett had become something larger than scandal. It had become a mirror. People weren't just talking about an airline anymore. They were talking about the way we look at each other. Inside his modest home, Charles sat at the dining table, surrounded by letters handwritten, typed, folded with care. Some came from flight attendants thanking him for his grace. Others came from strangers who'd once stayed silent in their own humiliations. Each envelope carried a piece of the world's conscience. Zara entered quietly, a tray of tea in hand. "You're trending again," she teased. Charles chuckled. "At 76, that sounds like a medical condition." She smiled, setting down the cups. "The advisory council wants to meet next week. They're naming it after you." He frowned. "After me?" "The Bennett Dignity Council. They want you to chair it." Charles shook his head slowly. "I just wanted them to say they were wrong." "They did more than that, Granddad," she said gently. "They gave you your voice back." He looked at her. "No, child, you gave it back to me." That afternoon, they walked together through the park near Lake Michigan. The air smelled of cut grass and freedom. Children ran across the paths chasing bubbles, laughter floating like forgiveness. "Funny," Charles said, leaning on his cane. "I used to think fighting was about anger. Turns out it's about patience." Zara smiled. "Patience takes more muscle than fury." He nodded. "And more faith." They stopped near a bench overlooking the water. Zara pulled out her phone, scrolling past hundreds of messages, thank yous, testimonies, and still a few insults. The world, even when moved, never stopped arguing with itself. She read aloud one message from a young man. "I watched your hearing with my grandmother. I never realized how much she carried from being told she didn't belong. Thank you for making her cry in peace." Charles' eyes glistened. Maybe that's victory right there. That evening, Zara attended the community center meeting. The room buzzed with energy students, teachers, activists, and even a few airline employees in plain clothes. On the wall behind the podium hung a banner, "Respect has no class." Maya introduced her. The woman who turned a flight into a movement. Zara stepped up to the microphone, a wave of applause cresting around her. When the noise settled, she spoke not like a victor, but like a messenger. "I used to think courage was the loud part of justice," she began. "But I learned courage starts in the quiet moments when you decide you won't shrink, even if your voice shakes." She paused, letting her gaze travel across the room. "Endurance is harder. It's the nights you stay awake, wondering if fighting back was worth it. It's the mornings you wake up and fight again anyway." Then her tone softened. "My grandfather taught me that victory doesn't mean revenge. It means building something that outlasts pain." The audience was still, hearts leaning forward. "But thanks be to God, who gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ." Corinthians 15:57. She continued, "Victory isn't loud. It's not a headline or a courtroom gavel. It's the sound of a door opening for the next person who knocks. Applause rose not frenzied, but full, like a congregation saying amen. After the talk, people lined up to shake her hand, to thank her, to tell her about their own quiet wars. She listened to every one, writing their names down in a notebook, labeled Voices That Matter. Outside, the sky turned amber. Charles waited for her on the sidewalk, leaning against a lamppost. "You were magnificent," he said. "I just told the truth," she answered. He smiled. "That's always been the hardest job." They walked home slowly, hand in hand. Streetlights flickered on like blessings, one by one. Somewhere in the distance, a plane roared overhead, lights blinking against the fading day. Charles looked up and smiled. "You think they're treating people better up there now?" Zara grinned. "I think someone's remembering to look twice before judging." He nodded. Then it was worth it. As they reached the corner, a passing stranger called out, "Mr. Bennett, thank you for standing tall, sir." Charles tipped his hat, humbled. "I just stood where God told me to." Zara slipped her arm around him. "And he held you up." At home, before bed, she wrote in her journal, "Today felt like peace. Not the soft kind, the earned kind. Maybe victory isn't when they apologize. Maybe it's when you forgive without forgetting. We didn't change the world, but we changed the temperature of the room. That's a start." She closed the book, looked out the window, and whispered, "Thank you, Lord, for letting truth fly." Downstairs, Charles hummed a tune his wife used to sing. Somewhere between the sound of his voice and the soft ticking clock, the house finally felt whole again. The world kept spinning, imperfect but awake. And for the first time, the Bennetts slept without the weight of yesterday. Justice doesn't roar, it endures. What happened to Charles and Zara Bennett wasn't just about race, class, or policy. It was about dignity, the human right to be seen. This story reminds us that courage begins when silence ends, and that faith is the bridge between humiliation and healing. When the world tries to shrink you, expand with truth. When hate is loud, let endurance be louder. I believe real victory isn't measured by applause, but by the doors it opens for others. Watching Zara turn fury into faith shows us that sometimes the hardest battles are fought with grace. If this story touched you, don't forget subscribe, where stories of courage, endurance, and victory